Welcome back to Painting Kids, everybody. This is Jessica, and today is our first Q&A, where you ask the questions and we give you an answer. Our first question is from Elsa, and she asked, how do you draw eyes? And we will show you in 3 simple tips to drawing eyes. So let's get started. So before we actually get started on our 3 tips, what I'm going to show you guys first is how to actually draw a traditional eye. Now, when we're in elementary school, we're usually taught that an eye is shaped like a football, like this. And the reality of it is this isn't the best advice to follow, just because when you're learning to draw, one of the hardest things you have to overcome is to not imagine the image that you're looking at. I know that sounds kind of funny, but when you're told that an eye looks like a football, all you're going to do is see footballs. And then when you go and try an eye that's different from that, it's going to make it harder for your brain to actually see what it's looking at. So you want to actually think more so about the shape of an object rather than identifying a pre-existing object with the shape, because then your brain's going to forever see that shape. So with a traditional eyeball, there's a lot more to it. You have a tear duct, you have the lower lid, you have the top lid, and this isn't even a full detailed eye that I'm showing you guys here. I just wanted to just very quickly give you an idea of just the anatomy of a realistic human eye. And I truly believe that everyone that is going into the arts should understand the anatomy of the human body, because it makes it so much easier for you to be able to later on, design your characters and really learn how to break the rules, if you will. You learn all the rules so that way you know how to break them and make it look real. If the football was the right way to go, then all of our favorite characters would have footballs on their eyes. So the first tip that I wanted to cover is to really think about your eye placement, regardless if you're drawing realistically or if you draw characters like how I like to draw. Eyes have a placement. They don't just sit flat on top of our face. There's a lot more to that. Even with your most simple characters, the creators think of the design, they think of the placement, they understand the human body enough to where they can, in a way, break the rules to make them look natural, if that makes any sense. So I just did a normal head here, where I just did 1 circle for the back of the head and then do the front for the face. And this is just a very rough drawing, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. And I made a guideline for where my eyes are going to sit, and I made a guideline for the center of my face. And now I'm roughing in my eye design for my character very softly at first. Just do a couple circles just to really, loosely put my placements where I want them. And then once I'm happy with the placement, that's when I'm going to go ahead and actually draw my eye. So the thing with placement as well is that you want to follow the form of your character's head. And like I said before, it doesn't really matter what kind of character you have. It can be the simplest of characters, or it can be as a complex that's a realistic character. All those creators thought about the placement of everything on their characters. It wasn't just something that they came up with in 2 seconds. It takes a lot of process to get your character exactly the way that you want it. So after I had my placement down, I drew in my top lid and my bottom lid. And I like to do simplified designs, so I'm not actually going to put an eyelid or anything on my character. I'm just going to put just an upper lid and lower lid line. I'm not going to actually put an eyelid on my character. But as you can see, my eyes aren't exactly the same. One eye is bigger than the other because one eye is closer, and even though I'm not drawing the bridge of my nose, the bridge of my nose is blocking part of the eye, and the perspective of the other eye that's behind the nose is different. because that's perspective. So when you're thinking of placement, you're also thinking of perspective, and making sure that even though it's an exaggerated character, you're making it believable for the viewer. And that's what makes it so that way we can look at it and be like, okay, yes, that looks correct, even though it's a character. And no one actually, has eyes as big as my character here. It's just not how it is. The proportion of the human body isn't this exaggerated, but this character does. And it looks good because I'm still using, the laws of perspective and following the form on my character's head. Because when it comes down to it, art is really just a giant magic trick. You're using existing anatomy and simplifying it down so that way people will look at your characters, look at what you've created, and believe that it's real, believe that the characters are real, believe that the place actually exists, even though technically it doesn't look anything like a real place. So as I'm finishing up my eyes here, my next tip that we're going to talk about is tip number 2, and that is that the brow is important. Now when I design eyes, I usually think of the eyes and the eyebrow as a unit together, because eyes are what give your character's expression. It doesn't matter what position the mouth or the nose is in, it is the eyes that really convey emotion. So it's important that your eyes and your eyebrow work together as a unit. So the way that you can kind of get a good idea of the placement of your eyebrow is to I'm just going to sketch just a rough outline here. But I'm just mimicking the form of my eye and bringing it up, and you can make it as high or as low as you want. There's not really a rule that says that it has to be so far up or so close to the eye, but I just very lightly sketch the form of my eye just above it, and then I put my eyebrow on there, and that's where my eyebrow will sit. Now in a later video, we're actually going to get into a lot more depth about brows and eyes and how they work together to create emotion. But just for this video, I just wanted to show you guys brow placement. So you never want to really forget about your eyebrows. I mean, even if it's as simple, as a line, you want there to be something to frame the eyes. And there are characters out there that don't necessarily have eyebrows. And so what a lot of the creators will do, instead of having their character have eyebrows, what they'll do is they'll have just lines indicating where their eyebrows would be depending on the emotion that the character is showing. You can see this quite a bit like in SpongeBob, Adventure Time, that kind of thing. The eyebrows aren't necessarily drawn on, but when they convey emotion, the idea is still there. So eyebrows are a very important part. So what I wanted to show you real quick too was, we talked about form and perspective, what you would do with the side view, or a profile view of a person. And like I said, I'm taking this is a very realistic approach, but even with a side view, I'm going to put that line there, that guide of where my eye would be. And even then, I still have to think about the form. And what I mean by that is that with the human face, the way it works is, our eyes are just eyeballs that sit in our skulls, and then we have our eyelids that cover our eyeballs, and then that's what, along with muscles and other things, hold it into place. So with a side view, you're not going to make a football shape on a side view. Again, when you look at certain characters, you might have creators that do that intentionally, where they have a front view eye even on a side view, which is fine. That's not an uncommon thing to see. But with a realistic eye, the side of it is like you would turn, a ball that was draped around in fabric, and you turn it to the side. It's going to look different than a straight on view. And the same is with an eyeball when you're looking at it on the side. But you'll still see, my top eyelid still overlaps my lower one. I still have an eyelid there, but my eyelid kind of pokes up more, and it's not as long, and you can see the lower lid a little bit better. So even with a side view, you still want to think about the position and the perspective that your eye is going to take. So my third tip is going to be, eyes aren't windows. And what I mean by that is when you are drawing eyes and you're going to start, adding eyelids, adding expression, and exaggerating that expression, you're going to be having your eyes, halfway closed, more open, and more often than not, beginners will think of eyes like windows, like the way that windows open. And that's not correct, because our eyelids are actually connected to each other. So instead of our eyes, opening and closing like a window, our eyelids are actually connected on the corners, and it more so acts as a hinge on that corner rather than a window where it just opens and closes. So I just drew another eye here just to show you again, a very generic eye, and so you can kind of understand where the eyelid is placed in just a normal eye. So the one I'm drawing now is, if our eyelids were to actually work like a window or a set of blinds or a garage door. I mean, there's countless examples of how some people will draw their eyes and perceive them. And it's, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look quite right. And the reason is if our eyes moved like that, they actually wouldn't even be connected. Whereas you'll see on the eye that I drew below, the corners of our eyes are connected. So in order for our eyes to move that way, where, they're moving up and they're also moving down, our eyelids would actually be completely disconnected from each other, which they're not. They're actually connected at the corners, right there and right there. So when you're drawing eyes, if you can indicate that connection, I mean, even with the simplest of eyes, you look at just even a dot, a full circle, it's all connected. There is no separation. So when you have a normal eye that is blinking, it will still stay connected to the corner, like this eye up here. I'm doing a half blink here, and I'm even with putting in just that little detail of having the corners connect, it looks a lot more natural, a lot more believable than if I were to have it completely disconnected. So those are my 3 tips on how to draw eyes. Now, like I said earlier in the video, we're going to be making a facial expression video that is going to go more in depth about how brows and eyes work together, and just how to get emotion on your character's face at all. If you liked this video, then go ahead, like, subscribe, and comment, and ask us questions for our next week's Q&A. And we'll make a video specifically for your question that you have. And we'll see you guys next time.